Welcome to this hostile takeover. I am in the world headquarters of Luke Beasley Studios, and I am joined by the aforementioned illustrious Lucas Beasley.
Jesse, we finally did it. Great to be with you.
So listen, man. First of all, thanks for inviting me in. More space here than in my single desk. Got a little round table. It's
really
nice.
Fancy.
I'm wont to say, stop electing stupid people to high office. I think that it can be trademarked now, TM, after I say it, because I say it so much. And I want to show you a clip today that involves James Comer, someone who I believe fits into that category of someone we should stop electing. He is not the chairman of this particular committee. This is the DOGE subcommittee that is chaired by none other than chief of stupid elected officials, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I think we should just play the clip and have you react. But there's several things that I think we should talk about on the other side.
Let's do it.
Do you want to dispute anything that I said in the remaining 30 seconds?
Thank you, Congressman. First of all, I want to recognize your concerns. One of the first things that I did in coming in May was to beef up our editorial standards. I directed my editor-in-chief, who, by the way,
Why is NPR even doing editorials?
I'm so sorry.
Even do editorials?
I don't mean editorial in terms of opinion editorial.
Do you even need opinion? What does it matter with the opinion? If you're a federally funded entity that's supposed to provide the news, can you not provide the news?
Of course,
fair and balanced?
Of course, Congressman. I mean, editorial standards for our journalism was to beef up our editorial practices, bringing in more editors to make sure that we have more points of view reflected in every story. I've engaged in a number of actions trying to address
and my
some of
time's
these
expired.
concerns.
I've lost confidence in public radio. I don't think, Madam Chair, they should get a penny of federal funds. I yield back.
Oh, it's so brutal. He doesn't know what that means.
Well, it's so brutal on a number of different fronts. One, there's actual damage and danger here because there should be a legislative purpose for what they're doing, and he's ready to make decisions based on what he's learned when he hasn't learned anything. He doesn't even know the basics about editorial, the rules surrounding how NPR operates.
Wow, and he thinks they're talking about like an editorial piece, like a op-ed,
like an op-ed, right?
And they're just saying their editorial standards. That's brutal. To your point, though, and this is something I keep coming back to. I don't think it's getting enough attention in the press, which is it's just across the ranks of government here in Congress, Trump's administration, FCC jumping down the throats of any outlets that Trump doesn't like. Obviously, the CBS lawsuit and the harassing of them, trying to get them to do what ABC News did, which was bend the knee. And then this wanting to defund, I saw Marjorie went on a rant at the end saying, I'm now calling for NPR and PBS to be defunded. Yeah. And the whole hearing was just them trying to make the case that essentially the outlets were too liberal. And so what's happening here is that across the government, at the direction of Trump, and it all started with years ago, him doing the whole fake news thing to discredit people who spoke out against him, is if you find any room between Trump and a media outlet, then they have to suffer. And this was the latest example of that. And to your point, there's a laughable nature to it because he's misunderstanding. You could see in the face of the witness, she was like, oh no, you don't know what you're asking me.
Well, what really gets me is he's not listening to her. Like he has his narrative. He has the thing he's going to say. This is Katherine Maher. She's the CEO and president of NPR, someone who is learned, someone who is educated, someone who understands the ins and the outs and the nuances of reporting. And then she has to answer to this goof, to this person who, when he led the oversight committee, remember the Biden crime family hearings that they constantly ran on about that went nowhere because it was just a distraction. And so is this. It's another distraction where they have no ability to understand the very serious role that they play as Congress, as a co-equal branch of government. They're there as the harassment arm of the Trump administration.
Yeah, something I'm sure that you've identified on your show.
Wait.
And that
you don't watch my show? You don't watch every single video I do?
I watch it more than you know, Jesse.
I'm out of here.
Is that there's a double standard. Democrats are held to different standards than Republicans. And the fact that we correctly don't want to stoop to their level on certain things. Like, I don't want a Democratic president to get in power and then go try to punish outlets that are negative towards them, because I do value the First Amendment. It sets up such an unequal playing field where they know sometimes like I heard reference in some conservative outlet. They published a piece. I referenced the CBS attacks by Trump because they edited an interview a way he didn't like, and then he lied about what the edits were. But there was a conservative outlet that came out and said this is setting a really bad precedent. And I was happy to see that they identified that, but I know that won't matter to Trump, to his supporters, because they know we're going to behave even when we get power back. They benefit from the fact that we actually do care about the Constitution.
Yeah.
The one you gave me.
Look at this.
We actually do care about these principles. And so they can spend the entire Trump administration attacking outlets and just stomping all over the First Amendment. And then they know we'll get in power, and they didn't set a bad precedent for us because we abide by actual principles. So my question to you is, how do we fight back against that? What do we do based off of the fact that they can keep pounding us over the head because we have to play a sort of on like gear 3 and they can go up to gear 10?
Yeah, I think, well, one, it's a very difficult question to answer because of the fact that there are multiple facets to it, but we can still abide by the Constitution and respect the oaths, and if you're a member of Congress or a federal employee for that matter, the President of the United States. When I was in the Marine Corps, you take an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You can still abide by that oath and adhere to your solemn vow to protect the Constitution and fight fire with fire. You don't have to disregard the truth and just be maniacs like they are. But I think there is something to be said about meeting these people where they are and battling back. Like, for instance, so many Democrats, so many senators voted for confirmation of people who are now, like Marco Rubio, for instance. Chris Murphy from Connecticut he publicly said, he regrets it. He's
like a couple weeks in.
Yeah, like, dude, hey, brother, we told you what was going to happen. Everyone knew. Why did you not know? So there is this sense of fairness and charity within Democrats that I think needs to be reevaluated. And we need to be acting more like Jasmine Crockett. Some things she's gone a little over the board. Hot Wheels, I think, is problematic, and that grates on me a little bit. But we need to bring that energy, that spirit.
Yeah.
What do you? What's your?
What popped in my head when you're talking about that was
you think James Comer's super smart?
Precisely. Was that Chuck Schumer quote? I don't know if you saw it. It was like, I believe, it was right before the election, I believe that once we defeat Trump, the Republicans will snap out of it and they'll go back to the old Republican Party. And it's sort of whatever. I honestly, the whole debate where he got a lot of justifiable rage towards him from the base over him siding with Republicans. My big beef with that was that he didn't lay out beforehand, here's our demands. Otherwise, we're not going to vote to continue funding the government. And instead, it was just sort of right before he went, okay, never mind, I'm going to vote with him. And that was a disaster. But I did sympathize with not wanting to force a government shutdown because that does hurt people. But my take afterwards was just his whole, even that quote, like that whole vibe is the antithesis of what we're talking about. And so we are going to be so effed if we get out of this era, if Democrats even figured out a way to win, but then come in to office and do sort of the Democratic Party of the past, or acting like we're dealing with the Republican Party of the past, and just business as usual it. And if they're gonna go 110% with the bad things, we gotta just clean out a lot of the leadership. I don't know how this actually logistically happens, but the Chuck Schumers need to just move along.
Yeah, there's a sea change that needs to happen.
Because we're going to need 110% for the good stuff.
Yeah, so what happens right now and this segment went kind of sideways, which is great. I love it because we're talking about things that are very, very important. Chuck Schumer also said just last week that his plan going forward is, just wait, y'all. Just wait till 2026. Republicans are going to be so embarrassed. They're going to be like fleeing like rats on a sinking ship. No, they're not.
Yeah.
The Republican Party, they have no shame. They have no dignity. Every single performance by a Republican is a dignity-free one. They're not going to be embarrassed. They're not going to be humiliated. They're not going to be like rats off a sinking ship. They're going to drive forward because they know they're playing the long game, and ultimately they will prevail if they can propagandize and demonize liberal outlets. Look, I brought it all the way full circle. Yeah. If they demonize NPR, if they demonize PBS, and they demonize, even if they act like CNN is some leftist news channel, what does it tell you about what their barometer is for what's fake and what's real?
Yeah, and that's what I'm okay. There, you mentioned it. There's some idiots in power, obviously, and what they're doing is so frequently terrible. But seeing the approval rate in the Democratic Party right now, to your point, there's a long. It's not a just wait approach, because people can be really fed up with this. That doesn't necessarily mean they're automatically going to go vote for the alternative. And we're going to have to see a reason given. And I think I've mentioned this now a few times, retrospectively looking at the Harris campaign, there was we'll take some incremental steps to change type message. And it would have been a much, much better thing for our country. But I think we need connected to what I said earlier, a dramatic shift in the direction of, you see how Trump told you he was going to be a disruptor, how sort of the Ossoff message in a recent speech where he said, we need to tell people the system is rigged. Trump was right about that. He just wants to rig it more for himself. Mm-hmm. That's what he wants to do. We have to actually be the ones to unrig it and to make it actually work for more Americans. And so I don't know how we get there. I think a lot of conversations like this one, and there is pressure on the Democratic Party, but my biggest fear is that we keep seeing this and a lot of Democrats go, okay, this is such a disaster. All we have to do is sit back and then don't bring the alternative that's strong enough to actually motivate people.
Yeah, it's going to take the younger generation to do so, because, septuagenarians like Chuck Schumer and so many others in the Congress, both House and Senate, are adhering to a political order that no longer exists. Mm-hmm. They are wont to, my good friend across the aisle, my good friend, Nancy Pelosi has said we need a strong Republican Party. Joe Biden said that Mitch McConnell was an honorable man. He called Kevin McCarthy an honest man. We need to stop with this. No, they're not. And it's all lip service. Let's deal with reality on reality's terms. And we need a younger generation to not act like this political order that is imaginary anymore exists. So
totally agree.
So since I'm in your studio, I would say, where can people find you? But we're here. We can find you here. Where on the YouTubes?
Yeah, don't actually find me here, this location, but you can find me.
That's what I did. I just knocked on the door and walked in.
Can we clap? At Luke Beasley on YouTube. Jesse, it was great to make it happen.
Yeah, thank you.